Welcome everybody to the April Bold Strokes Books Bookathon. You have made it through the whole day, so thank you for sticking around for the entire panel. This is our final group of the day, and we have some lovely readers here to entertain you. The titles you're about to hear from have all come out between March, April, or May. And I was always called upon first or second in school because of my last name starting with a B. So I'm actually going to do this reverse alphabetically and let myself go last. So I'll introduce, we do have Sam Ledel, BD Grayson, and Vali alongside myself, Nathan Burgoine today, but we are going to start, as I said, reverse order with Vali. So if I can get Sam and BD, if you want to mute and hide yourselves, and I will do the same once I'm done. So Ali will be reading for us shortly, and I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the book, and just if you've got a moment to let us know where the original spark or the idea of the book came from, and I will vanish now.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I got this idea from this book is we traveled to Morocco last December, right before the pandemic. So in the end of 18, or end of 19, and we sat through a kind of talk from one of the, she had a doctorate in women's studies from the University of Marrakesh. And this lady was very, very interesting. She was very beautiful, and she was very modernized, I guess, as compared to some of the other people that we met along our trip. And I thought, this is somebody who deserves to be in a book. So I got the idea. And then the other idea came from, I love the History Channel, and I love all things Templar and all things, some stories about the church and in the past. So it's just a good old-fashioned treasure hunt. So it's a woman to treasure. And a couple of weeks ago I read from the first character's point of view. So this time we have one of the characters, Levi Montbard, lives in New Orleans. She has a doctorate in history, and she is a treasure hunter, basically. And then we have Dr. Yasmin Hassani, who is in Marrakesh. So this time, since I read from Levi's point of view, I'm going to read from Yasmin's point of view. And this is her sister, Zara, is trying to talk her into going to New Orleans to teach at Tulane as a visiting professor for a couple weeks in the summer. So, are you listening to me? Zara Hassani sat on her sister's desk and tapped her heels on the side. I haven't decided yet. It's been almost a year since I've had any time off, and I was looking forward to the summer. Sometimes doing nothing is the way to go. Yasmin deleted every email and sent a message to everyone in her class that there would be no extensions or assignments for extra credit. Remind me in the future to stick with women's studies. These history courses for freshmen are a nightmare. Doing nothing for 3 months is the real nightmare. And you know they fall in love with you in that class. They spend their college careers pining over you once they've gotten a taste. Zara poked her in the ribs with her foot, making her laugh. Why are you here again? To talk you into taking this offer. You know all you're going to be doing here is ditching Mama's attempts to marry you off. Zara poked harder. A trip to the States would relieve both of us of all that nagging. I don't remember inviting you along. If I do decide to go, she laughed with Zara pouted. Okay, I'll think about it. Now get out of here so I can get back to work. Yasmin was an oddity in her family, not because she was able to support herself, was highly educated, and wasn't afraid to stand up for herself, but because she had no interest in marrying. Her job at the University of Marrakesh wasn't something she'd willingly give up in order to please a man. She'd had yet to find a man who'd willingly step aside and let her, his wife, shine. She pulled her hair into a ponytail and grabbed her briefcase. Her last class of the day was her favorite, a great group of young women who wanted to learn what their role in a modern Morocco could be. The sight of her boss walking quickly toward her made her want to hide behind a tree, but he'd already seen her. Professor Hassani, Amir Rami said. The formality had started when Yasmin had turned him down for a date. It had taken 6 times, but her lack of interest had finally penetrated his testosterone-stoked brain. Tulane would like an answer by tomorrow, if at all possible. They'll be disappointed if you turn it down, but I'm willing to send someone else. I'll give them a call, thank you. And if there's nothing else, I'm late for class. Your mother invited me to dinner tomorrow night. I look forward to seeing you there. We have so much to talk about. He gave her the creeps with his graying hair and hard eyes, but her mother was trying to pave the way to marriage. I hope you have a wonderful time, but I have an engagement planned. Never mind that it was watching the next season of the show she was binging on. That's disappointing on so many levels. Yasmin stepped around him and lost her smile. Excuse me, as I said, I'm late. The classroom was empty when she arrived, and she stared at her watch. She wasn't so late that her entire class would have left. Any confusion disappeared when she saw who was sitting on the first row of her lecture hall. Nabil Talbi was the head of Morocco's foreign intelligence. Before she took the position with the university, she worked for him. Did you scare off my students? Nabil was still a handsome man, but the scar that marred his left cheek gave people pause. They took some convincing, but I was nice about it. Do you remember I don't work for you anymore? She put all her stuff down and stared at him. Did you miss me? From the moment you decided on this boring existence instead of the work you did for me. Nabil's smile widened and it made her laugh. It's never too late to change your mind. You should remember that. The time I spent with you was special, but this is what I love doing. Please, I have people kissing my butt all day long. Nabil put his hands up. You're the only person in my life who has never done that. Don't change now. I'll never take you away from these kids. My nephew is in your beginning history class, and he raves about you. Now who's kissing butt? She moved to sit by him and kissed both his cheeks. You seldom leave the palace in Rabat. Seeing you here means you either did miss me or you need something. We intercepted 3 messages from Algeria that require your special talents. Nabil and his staff spent most of their days chasing down terrorist threats that came from less stable areas. Their leader, King Driss VI, had done plenty to bring women into prominence, and he also quelled and dismissed anyone who tried to see terrorism within their borders. Are you sure? There have to be plenty of people at your disposal who could do this. Yasmin loved her country, but like her mother, the government has specific ideas on the life she should be leading. Once she gave in, it was a slippery slope to being sucked in completely. You trusted me once, Yasmin. What's changed? Nabil's tone became serious, but his expression radiated kindness. My sister reminded me today of people's expectations for my life, she said, shrugging. The expectations of others, and they will push until I either give in or have to give up on relationships altogether. My expectations for you are to stay here. How will I find the next Yasmin Hassani to make my job easier, unless you're in the classroom molding young minds into something extraordinary? His smile was warm, and she believed his words. Nabil's world didn't have room for flights of romanticism and empty flattery. Until I find this wonderful person, I'll come by and ask for favors. In honor of our friendship, I'll try not to overburden you. So, and I will show you a picture, since I didn't get to bring the book. So it is A Woman to Treasure. So
I love your cover. I love all your covers, actually. You can always, I don't know how our artists manage to do it at Bold Strokes, but you can always, and I know it's the whole point of the job, but you can always pick up a book and you know exactly what you're about to get. And
I know.
Yeah, and I love that. So thank you very much. And I was saying in the chat, and there was a little bit of discussion going on about who hasn't had a crush on a prof. We all had that moment, I think, in college or university. Our next reader will be Sam Ledel. Sam, if you can introduce yourself to us, and if you don't mind answering the question of where the major spark for your book or where the initial idea of the book came from.
Absolutely, happy to. So well, I'll be reading today from The Princess and the Odium, which is book 3 in a trilogy. So I kind of have to go back to book 1 to talk about what initially started the idea. And the character of Jastin is the one who actually came to me first. She just sort of popped into my head, and I was actually visiting with one of my sisters at the time who in the past was a really great sounding board for my writing ideas. And so we just kind of started going back and forth on what she was like and what her world was like. And so Jastin and then the villain sort of popped up first, and the rest was built from there. So then from there, obviously, the next book came with Broken Rain. So once that initial character came into my head, that got things going. So like I said, today I'll be reading from The Princess and the Odium, the third and final book in the Odium trilogy. The trilogy is a fantasy adventure series featuring a romance between the two leading ladies, Princess Aurelia Diremaid and Jastin Cypher. You meet them in book one, Daughter of No One, and the events of that book sort of catapult them into this epic adventure, and they end up going on a journey across their magical realm, which is the premise of book two, Broken Rain. While they're on that journey, mayhem sort of breaks loose in Aurelia's kingdom, and she, Jastin, and their families are forced to fight not only to survive, but to take back their home, which is what happens in book three. So the reading I'm doing today immediately follows a very tense conversation between Aurelia's mother, Queen Dactyri, and Jastin. Jastin has reluctantly agreed to help the royal family, who have become fugitives in their own kingdom, and they are on the run. So Jastin is harboring them in her friend Egypt's meadow. And one thing that will be good to know for this reading is that characters use what's called a sail, which is essentially magic fire that they can manipulate. Jastin felt light. She'd never spoken to the queen like that. Occasionally, in moments of frustration over her sister's health or the terrifying moments following one of her nightmares, she had pictured herself shouting at the royal family. Those moments, passionate as they were, had been brief. Generally, she didn't think they were worth her time. But ever since she'd watched the queen bare her controlling teeth after the attack in the woods 6 months ago, unwilling to let her daughter go, Jastin had been dying to speak to her. She hadn't had a plan or thought about her choice of words. She certainly hadn't imagined speaking to Her Majesty in a situation like this. Still, their exchange left Jastin feeling pretty pleased. "You look amused," Aurelia muttered as they knelt on opposite sides of the fire pit. As Jastin conjured her sail, Aurelia doing the same, she said, "I have begun to understand your attitude toward your mother." Aurelia's sail flickered, then leapt from her hands toward Jastin, who fell back. What was that for? Aurelia's eyes shimmered with anger. "She is frightened, Jastin. We all are." Frowning, Jastin let her soul linger on the scraps of wood until it caught. Standing, she placed her hands on her hips. They could be a little more grateful. Scrunching her face, Aurelia tilted her chin up. "You're correct on that front." For a moment, she held her gaze, and the longing Jastin thought she saw in it sent a chill down her back. They had so much to talk about. Aurelia glanced around. "Where is your dear friend Egypt anyway?" "She's off somewhere. No doubt she'll be back soon." Then she smiled as Aurelia scanned the ground and pulled 2 larger dry logs closer to the fire. Jastin shook her head. Aurelia's habit of making seats remained endearing. As if feeling her gaze, Aurelia looked up as she adjusted one of the logs with the toe of her boot. "What?" "Nothing." Jastin found herself mesmerized by Aurelia's eyes. She wanted to walk around the fire and pull her close, beg her forgiveness for what she'd done on their journey. She knew all of this back and forth now was simply Aurelia being, well, Aurelia. She had to make things look all right, even if they weren't. A loud, pointed cough broke the silence. King Granus stared at the ground near them, moving a small rock with his foot. The queen held a look in her eyes Jastin couldn't place, but didn't like having aimed at her. "Egypt will come around soon," Jastin said to break the awkward silence. "Nobody can find this place, so you're safe." The queen and king nodded, and Jastin wished she could stay to watch Benasti's royalty fend for themselves, but she had to get back to the castle. She started for the meadow's edge. When she was almost to the trees, the queen shouted, "Aurelia!" Jastin turned. The princess sprinted past her parents. When she did, Aurelia called back, "I'm going to help her." The queen raised her hand, magenta flames shooting out from her fingertips. In seconds, they engulfed Aurelia, trapping her in a bubble of her mother's own sail. Aurelia, Justin rushed to her. The flames seemed to only impede her ability to break free, as Aurelia demonstrated through a series of pounding with her fists against the bright light, shouting furiously, "Let me out." The queen stormed forward and Justin stepped back. "Aurelia Diremaid, if you think we are letting you run off with her again, then you seriously misunderstood." Up close with the magenta light dancing over her face, the queen looked fearsome. "You cannot keep me here against my will. I am your mother, I most certainly can." Aurelia pounded harder against the sail. The frustration on her face and her fists made Justin want to leap in the fire after her. "You can't keep me in here." Aurelia stopped her fruitless efforts to escape, her mother's sail clearly too strong. The queen stood face to face with her, the flames crackling in the air between them. "Aurelia," she said, "when will you understand that everything your father and I do is for your benefit? We only want to keep you safe. All you've done is stifle me. I knew nothing before I left the castle. You were taught so much of ancient stories and figures, but not of our own realm, Mother. You and Father kept us ignorant of everything that mattered. And look where it got us. Look where it got Brennus." Dectiri stumbled, her light eyes lit with their own fire. Justin was certain the flames of her sail intensified with her shock. Aurelia looked down. "I'm not a child anymore, and Brennus is gone. I have to be out there, Mother." She seemed to steel herself before adding, "As future queen, what good am I to our people if I'm ignorant to the world they live in?" Her chest rising and falling quickly, the queen's outward agitation dimmed, her sail with it. She gave a final flourish of her hand, and the magenta flames vanished, releasing Aurelia. "Thank you," she said. Then she stepped closer, placing her hands on her mother's forearms. "You have to trust me. We're going to be all right." The king walked over now that the wrath of his wife had subsided. He raised a hand to Aurelia's cheek. "We don't want to lose you too." Justin shifted, uncomfortable at what had become an intimate family moment. "You won't lose me." Aurelia caught Justin's gaze. Justin knows what she's doing. A swell of gratitude filled Justin's chest. Aurelia released her parents' hands, which reluctantly fell to their sides. "We'll be back once we've secured Justin's family," Aurelia said. "Please, stay here. We'll discuss matters upon our return." Justin gave a small chuckle at her decisiveness, then at the queen and king's compliance as they took seats on the logs Aurelia had arranged. When Aurelia walked by without a passing glance, Justin hurried to catch up. Unsure what to say, she finally asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Aurelia seemed to focus on her footsteps. "Let's go save your family." Justin followed, awestruck. The queen's sail may have raged with power moments ago, but it was Aurelia whose fire burned brightest among the Diremaids. Thank you.
Ooh, that was nice. I have to admit, I'm a sucker for any child standing up to their parent scenes, but making it like queens and princesses, yeah, I'm down. So our next reader will be BD Grayson. Now, I was lucky enough when we did our, I think the last reading session, I got to hear a piece, and I get to hear another piece. I'm very excited about that. So BD Grayson, if you would be willing to tell us where the spark of this novel came from, and then take us away.
Okay. This happened, my wife and I went to a concert, and it was a country music concert in Atlanta, and we watched the artist walk across the stage, and I kept going back to the thought, what would it be like for an openly gay person to be in that world? And it's just something that I never could really shake. So I sat down and started writing the book, and it came really kind of quickly. The last reading that we did, I read where Vanessa and Lachlan meet. So I thought this time that we would read where Vanessa meets Lachlan Page, who is this big, huge mega country star. They have been talking back and forth for a while, and Lachlan has brought Vanessa to see her in concert. And it will be the first time that Vanessa has ever seen that side of Lachlan. And Lachlan has given one of her assistants, Spencer, the job of catering to Vanessa while she's there, making sure she gets everything she needs. So that's kind of where we're picking up. Lachlan has messaged and said, you know, when the opening act gets done, for them to come back downstairs, that she wants to see Vanessa right before she goes on stage. So that's kind of where we're picking it up. After the final bow and a good night from the opening act, Vanessa and Spencer quickly made their way to the elevator. Jamie was standing guard outside the dressing room, and she firmly indicated that they should wait until Lachlan finished her ritual pre-show meeting with her band. Soon the door opened and several people left the room. Jamie stuck her head in, said something that Vanessa couldn't hear, then moved, motioning with her head for Vanessa to go in. She walked in and the door closed behind her. What Vanessa saw surprised her. Lachlan was pacing the room, shaking her hands out and humming loudly to keep her voice warm. Hey, she stopped and looked up at Vanessa. Hey. Vanessa's heart stopped and her mouth went dry at the vision before her. Lachlan looked incredible. She had on knee-high boots and a black skirt that clung to her toned thighs. Her shirt was slightly oversized and white. Her hair was flawless, and her makeup was something that an artist had done. Lachlan laughed, bringing Vanessa back to the present. I'm sorry, Vanessa said as she blushed. I've been looked at a lot of ways, but that's now my favorite one. Is it weird that I now see the other Lachlan Page? The beautiful, flawless Lachlan Page? Lachlan's smile failed. Well, that depends on how you feel about Lachlan Westbrook. Honestly, Lachlan nodded. I just see you, Lach. You are just really... Vanessa slightly shook her head. God, you are gorgeous. Lachlan's smile returned. Okay, I can deal with that version winning for now. There was a knock at the door and Jamie leaned in. Vanessa, you need to make your way to your seat if you want to see her come out. And trust me when I say you want to see that. Thanks. Vanessa nodded as Jamie closed the door, relieved that she had been somewhat friendly. So where are your seats? Lachlan asked. That way I know where you are. Third row to the right of the stage. Stage left. Got it. Okay, I think I should probably go. Yeah. You seem nervous. Lachlan smiled weakly, still trying to impress the girl. Vanessa took a chance and stepped forward. She leaned in and stopped as she gestured toward Lachlan. I don't want to mess anything up. Lachlan swallowed hard. I have people that can fix anything that you are about to do. Vanessa placed the slightest of kisses on her cheek and whispered, I'm very impressed by any version that I have seen of you. Relax. Lachlan stood stone still and only turned her eyes watching Vanessa walk away. Yeah, that helped. Vanessa laughed with her. Sorry. When they were outside the room with Lachlan's band, Vanessa turned to her one last time. I'll see you when you're done. Vanessa rejoined Spencer at the elevator and took it back to the first level. They were in their seats only moments when the lights went out. The roar of the stadium was unlike anything Vanessa had ever heard. It was deafening. The band started to play one of Lachlan's hits, and the crowd got even louder. When the floor opened and the platform that Lachlan was standing on emerged from underneath the stage, the stadium rumbled. The rumble erupted into a body-shaking, teeth-jarring roar when Lachlan had fully emerged from below the stage. Vanessa realized that her mouth was agape. Vanessa looked over at Spencer. Spencer smiled and had to talk loudly over the crowd. I know, it's amazing. It gets me every time, never gets old. Vanessa turned back to the stage, and for the next hour and a half, she was blown away by Lachlan Page. So this is Love's Falling Star. It came out in March.
So I have to say, there was a really smooth line in there. And that whole, yeah, oh, nicely done.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you all. I'm trying to live up to that. It's actually not going to be easy. So my novella is called Village Fool. It has to be on this because it's a novella, so it's quite small. It was inspired mostly on a bit of a dare among some writer friends. We were talking about how holiday romances are so heavily Christmas. And we talked about like there should be more holiday romances from other holidays. And jokingly, someone said, "What about April Fool's Day?" And immediately something occurred to me, and then that wouldn't let go. And I wrote a throwaway line in my previous holiday romance, Fo Ho Ho, about an April Fool's prank that got two guys together in the friend group. And then before I knew it, I was writing the story of the two guys getting together in the friend group because of an April Fool's Day joke. So the only thing I think you need to know going into this is the joke in question, and this isn't a spoiler, it's in the write-up of the book, is that a friend takes Owen's phone and changes his contacts as a joke, as an April Fool's Day joke. And as a result, Owen, who has a massive crush on his former physiotherapist, is texting all these sort of lascivious thoughts about his former physiotherapist. He thinks he's texting them to his friend Felix, but he's actually texting them to Toma, the physiotherapist. And last time I read the moment where he realizes this is what's happened. This time I'm going to leave him blissfully ignorant. So you're going to hear, or you're going to watch basically as Owen texts all these things. Just keep in mind that he is not texting them to his friend. He's texting them to the man he's talking about. Owen started a new message for Felix, then paused to consider. What is it Felix said he wanted? Updates about the guy's thigh? All right. Owen, update the first. The highlight of working out at Body Positive is still seeing the world's best chest. And before you tell me I'm shallow, I am fully aware that the world's best chest would be nothing without the kindness. It's borderline unfair, really. The chest hair alone makes me miss being in recovery. I didn't think I'd ever like the mirrors here when I first saw them, but it turns out there are benefits. It's way less creepy to ogle hot cupcakes through a mirror. At least I hope it is. It is, right? He hit send, hoping the over-the-top take would make Felix smile, and then return to his audiobook. Despite the occasional cupcake viewing, it wasn't nearly as much fun to work out these days. Owen had zero intention of ever being the kind of gym goer who bulked up or tried to gain muscle mass, but he couldn't help feeling proud of the tone he gained in the last few months. He didn't add much weight to the machines, raising and lowering the bar carefully at a regular pace, breathing in and out with emotion, paying attention to how his shoulder and forearm felt, and how far he was pushing against the tight sensation he learned was the limit of his injured tendons. A slight burn set in, but it was a good burn. His audiobook paused with a slight beep. Felix had texted him back. Wow, cupcake is my new favorite word. And I think mirror ogling is just fine. That was a great way to start the morning. Does update the first mean there will be more? Also, I prefer you recovered. Don't make me come over there to make sure you're not pushing yourself. Owen smiled, imagining Felix bursting into the gym to tell him off. He checked the mirrors for Toma. It was too bad he'd missed seeing Toma go. Those thighs, that butt. The man was thick in so many enjoyable ways, without the intimidating super cut thing a lot of gym guys had. Owen stood by the descriptor. Toma was a total cupcake. He tried another. Owen, update the second. Don't worry, even the world's best chest isn't worth more rehab. Maybe for the thighs. I would risk it. No, that's untrue. One car wreck is enough. They are amazing thighs, though. If they weren't attached to such a funny, compassionate human being, one would maybe hate the thighs. Instead, it's more proof that the world can indeed occasionally be a just and good place. He hit send and grinned to himself. He was about to turn his audiobook back on, but then he saw the little three gray dots dancing on the screen and waited. You are making it really hard to focus on work. Owen laughed and got back to his workout. He did another when his workout was done. Owen, update the third. Workout almost done. Unfortunately, no further visual contact, so I have to finish my boring ass exercises without any views of any amazing asses. Plus side, I have a great imagination, so I can fantasize, complete with the rumbly voice. Hyper-realistic imagination. It's a genius thing. I am blessed that way. Hey, Owen? Owen jumped. Speaking of the rumbly voice devil, Thomas smiled at him in the reflection and had quite the twinkle in his dark brown eyes, which wasn't unusual, but it was an edge of something else too, something sunnier. Owen's cheeks burned. Oh, hey. And there it was. In text with friends or sitting around the gaming table, Owen had instant access to an endless stream of amusing dialogue. Playful Owen could make people laugh. Or at work, confident Owen could troubleshoot with clients on the other side of the ocean. But face-to-face Owen, real Owen tapped out at, "Hey, sorry, I didn't mean to surprise you," Toma said. "I wanted to catch you before you left, and I'm not interrupting?" No. He shut his mouth before a fourth no could escape. "May I?" Toma said, holding his hand close to Owen's shoulder. Owen nodded, too tongue-tied to do much else. Toma pressed his palm against Owen's shoulder. "Go ahead." Owen raised and lowered the weights in a smooth, practiced motion. As always, the heat of Toma's hand pressed against his skin, even through his t-shirt, made him want to shiver. The way Toma focused his attention so completely on what he was feeling at least gave Owen another opportunity to look in the reflection of the mirrors without Toma noticing. Except this time, Toma was looking right at him. "That's feeling great," Toma said. "Sure is," Owen thought. I'm sore this morning. I didn't sleep well. I was up, awake, not sleeping." "Oh my God, Owen, shut up." "Well, don't push it. You know your limits." "Oh, I have the day off. I'm going to do as little as possible. After this, after the gym." "Oh God, shut up. Toma cleared his throat. "Does that mean you're free later? Like 4-ish? Owen blinked. What was happening? He stared. Toma's smile grew a little tight. Owen realized he hadn't replied. "Sorry. Yes. I've got nothing on my schedule at all." He winced. Nothing at 4. I'm meeting the guys for board game night at 6. Okay, that was better. Now he didn't sound like a total social pariah, just a giant nerd. But Toma knew that already. "Would you like to meet up at Bittersweets? I'm done at 3:30, so we could be there at 4. I can catch up. We can update." "Yerk," Owen choked out loud, then swallowed. Some combination of the words yes, sure, and okay. "Yes, sure, okay." "Good, that's good." Toma rubbed his beard, grinning. "I'll see you then." Then the burly cupcake dream fodder was gone, and Owen was left to stare at his own reflection in the mirrors of body positive in something akin to complete and utter panic. Because unless he was totally misreading, Toma just asked him out. He pulled up his phone and drafted another text for Felix. "Owen, update the 4th. My life is amazing." So there you have it. And of course, it doesn't go very well once he finds out that Toma was the one replying to him the whole time.
That is hilarious.
Okay, so everybody, if you want to ask any questions, just by all means, pop them into the Q&A there. But I'm going to start going with asking y'all if you have plans for something next. So I'll ask you for what you're working on next, or if you're not at that point yet, if there's even ideas bouncing around. What's up next for you, Allie?
Ooh, I have a whole bunch of stuff coming up. Let's see, in August, I think Calumet comes up, which is, imagine you leave your small hometown in Louisiana and you go off to college, and then you become a professor at Berkeley, and then you never come home because it's just not a good place to be. But you're convinced by your best friend to come home for your 20-year class reunion, and there are many, many, many surprises that will await you. So that's one. And then I'm in edits right now for the second part of Beneath the Waves. So Turbulent Waves will come out, I think, at the end of this year. And then I am now writing Writer's Block, which is, it's a mystery writer, very prominent mystery writer from New York who suffers from writer's block. And one day in the middle of the night decides to buy a house online in the Faubourg Marigny, which is right behind the French Quarter. And it's a total disaster, but she has a very nice, very good looking next door neighbor. So who happens to be an editor for a publishing house in New Orleans. So they start a relationship through the window. Not really speaking, just an interesting relationship through the window. So I think that is, and then I haven't started writing it yet, but I did sign a contract for, it's a rodeo book. So I'm researching rodeo right now. So I'm pretty busy.
Wow, I can't imagine being like 4 books ahead in planning. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I am actually going to get a manuscript to my editor next week of a historical romance. So I'm kind of switching gears a bit from fantasy to historical romance. I'm actually pretty excited about it. It's, the setting in southwestern Utah was actually the inspiration for it, and it takes place in the 1930s in a small mining town. So I'm looking forward to getting that one out into the world eventually. And then there's a fantasy on the back burner that I've been working on for a while, and maybe one or two other things. So hopefully lots to come in the future.
Okay.
And BD, this was your first novel, right?
It is.
Okay, so did you have another thing in the fires yet? Have you been bitten by the bug?
We have been talking about a couple of different follow-up books. I wrote a series about 10 or 12 years ago that we are turning into. We're going to film it, and we're either going to send it to a web series, or we have a production company that wanted a concept episode. So we're going to do a concept episode, a trailer next month. So once I get that behind me, things will get a little bit easier. But I am kind of throwing the idea out there that we may do a book to go with two of the characters from the series. So it would sort of almost be like a book that kind of followed two of the characters during the first season of the series. So and then there's one that's an age gap. I've never done an age gap book before. It's one of the tropes I've never done. I like that. But yes, I've got those two things right now that's got my hands tied.
I don't think I've ever felt more like a slacker than this right now. I have another novella coming out in a couple of months. That's it. No, that's not true. I have a YA novella for next year as well. So I'm two novellas in, but next is another village story set in my little fictionalized version of Ottawa's gay village, but this time there's a dash of magic. I'm going back a little bit to my speculative fiction roots. So it's about a guy who runs a little tea shop called Nice Teas. His sister has the most annoying ability in the world. She can read tea leaves and she's never wrong. So he has a sister who is always right. And when he brews teas, he can sort of give you a little shot of confidence or a little bit of willpower or a little bit of patience or that kind of stuff. So, and it's all about his sister telling him in no uncertain terms should he fall for this guy that he's totally falling for. And she knows it's wrong, and he's like, I don't care. So that's the next one. And the YA one, I don't think I can actually talk about very much yet, but that'll be next year. Something actually something BD just mentioned, and Sam as well. Are there genres or tropes that you really want to try that you haven't tried yet? I don't know if you can possibly answer that, Allie, given how many books you've written, but
yeah, no, I mean, the one thing I would really love to try, and I hate to say I'm too lazy to do it because you have to do a ton of research, is a historical novel. I would love to do it. I love historical novels. I know Bold Strokes has a couple. I love reading those, and I would love to write one, but you have to do a lot of research because I went to a seminar and they were saying, oh my God, if you put like a button when they hadn't invented buttons yet, people get all bent out of shape. So it's like, maybe I'll just read them. I'm not going to write one. Put a button or a zipper where something doesn't belong. Like, ooh, she undid her zipper. They didn't have zippers back then. It's like, and one girl in New Orleans would definitely, Jillian would probably be the first one to text me. What are you thinking? Putting a zipper in the scene? No. So, that's the one I haven't tried. Still on the back burner, but eventually I will. When I have time, I'll do that.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm always afraid of the queerness of historicals as well. Like, how can you possibly even find out what happened? Because our history is erased in the first place, right? Like, yeah, I'm the same. I'm like, if I go anywhere further past than the 50s, I don't think I'd be able to do it.
Exactly.
How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I was just thinking that there is so much research, Allie, in historical fiction. I feel like I probably wrote down as many, historical facts as I did my actual, the length of my manuscript. But I kind of like that stuff. So I had fun with it. But I don't know. I started with contemporary fiction. That was my first book with BSB. And then the fantasy, and now kind of going over to historical romance. So I don't know what else I would really want to try out. I know what I probably would not ever want to do is like sort of like a suspense thriller or murder mystery sort of thing, because I just don't think I could manage to do that. I've said before that I admire people so much who can write those, because the puzzles in their minds that they can create and then pull apart and then put back together in all these different ways is astounding to me. So that's probably something I'll stay away from. But yeah, anything else? I don't know. We'll see.
MBD?
I think the only thing probably that I haven't kind of done is probably science fiction, that I kind of wish that I had the capacity to do, because your options are sort of endless. The things that you can do are endless, but it's just never been something that I have been able to write for whatever reason. So if I could pick one thing, I would, so that way you get to branch out into different things, so that would probably be it, something sci-fi.
I think I'm there as well. I think we all probably have trunked stories and trunked novellas or trunked novels that we started, or outlines where we're like, that's not going anywhere. I have two that are very like harder edge science fiction where I'm like, I don't know enough about physics or enough about whatever. Like I don't understand this enough to go here. So maybe if I toned it back to like pew pew level of sci-fi, I could maybe do it. But
I have enough trouble with this world, much less making up one. It's really hard to do.
I think one other thing, if I have one more thing I would love to do, I'm an unabashed short fiction author and a lover of short fictions. I would love to take part in a shared world anthology, something where, like, and honestly, New Orleans is always the place that jumps to mind, where it would be a wonderful setting to have a whole bunch of different authors write a single story, sharing characters back and forth across the whole book. But I know those are tough sells, but consider yourselves invited if that's the kind of thing you'd like to do.
I already told you I suck at it, so I'm out. For that reason, I'm out.
Those are fun though. I would think, like, every once in a while I would like to borrow somebody else's character and put them in my book. But that might make them mad. I did that.
Do you guys Tuckerize? I'm sorry, do you know what I mean if I say Tuckerize? So do you throw in names of people you know as kind of like little nods or smiles that a reader might get if they're in the know, but wouldn't get if they didn't know? Have you ever done that?
I've put people in my life, not so much people in the bold strokes, but yeah, some of my secondary characters are real people. And they really need some mental health, like a Christmas gift or something.
I like to joke that on the copyright page where it says any resemblance to living or
exactly.
I have to it's totally all made up, but some of those characters
I've changed the names to protect the innocent, but you're totally going in a book.
A joke about anyone who's ever worked retail has, if they've ever written a character that's been murdered, that someone who was murdered was someone that they had to serve while they worked in retail.
No, I work in the nonprofit world and I have to put a smile on my face no matter, like, you're an idiot. But I have to smile. Oh, thank you. I'm killing you in my next book.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we only have about 5 minutes left. I'm just going to quickly check to make sure there are no new questions. Okay, no. All right. So I want to thank everybody for coming and sticking with us. This is the last panel of the day, so congratulations. You should go pour yourself a glass of something enjoyable. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.